He said, I have integrated my people into a burning house. Oh, come on, man. You stirred me up now. You stirred me up. He said, what are you talking about, Doc? He said, I forgot the economics. Economics. Number one, economics, politics, law enforcement, media, then education. Too many broke folks got education and we can't do nothing. You have to get economics with education. I have to pay the bills here every month. Big time. If I didn't have the ability to have a good relationship with folks with money, SLC will be out of business. What are you saying, Steele? I'm saying you get out to vote and you vote for your candidate. You hold them accountable. That's right. You hold them accountable. And I'm closing, Darrell. I go to Cleveland, Ohio once a week because we black elected officials and 9 council members that would not support us on getting a prime contractor. You can't be afraid of power. You can't be afraid of about getting out to vote and you won't stand up and give your life to get economic justice. It's economic apartheid in this country. Oh, y'all don't hear me. When you get out to vote, you also getting out economic development opportunity for your people. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for being at SCLC. SCLC is alive and well. We are one of the few civil rights organizations that will take a stand. You know why? Because we got the power to stand up against the power of America, the power of the international community. Power against power equals success. Thank you so much. Love is what love does, and I love you. Let's have some courage.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. It is our duty to win. We must love and support each other. We must love and support each other. We have nothing to lose. 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 We have nothing to lose.
We have nothing to lose.
But I change.
All right. You know, it's my pleasure to bring up something. You know, Dr. Steele, I always hate coming back up to the microphone after Dr. Steele speaks, because everybody's looking for me to do this, you know, this great, you know, meteoric speech, and only Dr. Steele can do that. But let me tell you, when it comes down to the streets and fighting for rights, fighting for voting rights, here in the state of Georgia, with that Senate Bill 202 that was passed, that was meant to oppress, to stop, to impede black voters and voters of colors and young voters from voting in the state of Georgia, there's a lady that I came across who said, as Dr. Steele just said, nah, you ain't going to stop it. You know, what we're going to do is we're going to get over this hurdle, and we're going to knock it down so that no one else has to deal with it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to bring up the executive director, the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, Miss Helen Butler.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. I am so happy to be here in the cradle of the civil rights movement. Dr. Steele, Mrs. Steele, Barbara, and Darrell, and Latasha, and all of these people, young people. We got young folks right here. That's what matters the most. I'm Helen Butler, Executive Director of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. An organization was founded by the late Dr. Joseph Eccles Lowry, along with other civil rights leaders. And our mission is to improve the quality of governance by having an informed and active electorate that will hold elected officials accountable. So what I'm telling you today is you standing up and voting early, despite our people, our Secretary of State, our Attorney General saying that Saturday wasn't going to be a voting day, but you showed them that Saturday is a voting day. And we want you to continue to do that this entire week throughout the state. Early voting starts today and ends on Friday, December the 2nd. But that's not your last opportunity to vote. You could also vote on Election Day, December the 6th. So please, if you need a free ride to the poll, we're doing that right now for you. Call 877-524-8683 and request that free ride. And thanks to Transformative Justice Coalition, that bus that you see with John Lewis on it, we're going to be taking senior high-risers to the polls today. But one more thing I want you to know. If you encounter any problems, don't be deterred. Don't leave the polling location. Call our hotline, 866-OUR-VOTE. Our election protection hotline is 866-OUR-VOTE. And I'll leave you with the saying of our leader, and I know John Lewis said the vote is precious, but our leader said voting is a sacred right. But for us, it is a moral obligation. So the obligation is for you to take 25 of your circle to the polls. Make sure they get there. Don't ask if you're going. Say, come on, come ride with me. And if you need a free ride, again, that number is 877-524-8683. Go vote.
Thank you, Helen Butler. You know, it's my pleasure to now bring up, very interesting, when we were in Georgia in 2020, we were told that it was a pandemic and that black voters weren't coming out and that young voters weren't coming out and that it was only going to be maybe a 10 or 15 or 20% show up. Well, they knocked the doors off of that and they showed up all kinds of record numbers of young voters that came out in 2020. And then as we turn now to this election in 2022, we again see record numbers coming out from our young voters and our black voters. Ladies and gentlemen, one of our partner organizations that have been working with us in the trenches for quite a while now, and I'm always very happy to bring them up and to speak of them because they represent that young vote. They reach out to the young voters. They reach out to the college students. They reach out to the non-college students. They reach out to any young person that's willing to get involved and work, and some that aren't willing to get involved and work because they want to show them the importance of what can occur when they become politically active. It's my pleasure to bring up Reggie Weaver with the Hip Hop Caucus. Reggie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Reggie Weaver. I am the Respect My Vote campaigner for a Hip Hop Caucus, and we are glad to be here joining all of our partners on the ground. Hip Hop Caucus this year for the midterm, we've been in Georgia throughout the midterm, helping to register people to vote, as it's been named, helping voters to understand the issues that are on the ballot. You all know the issues. Mrs. Steele laid it out very well. One of those is economic justice, of course, criminal justice reform, health care, the environment. All of those issues are important, and we've been trying to educate our community on how those issues impact them personally and why the voting process is a critical part of that. So we're here, and we're happy to be here again to continue that work this second time around and to finish the job. And one of the reasons we are here is because we have no choice. When we look at some of these policies, some of the policies we are living with tell us explicitly that we have no choice. Just last week, the Georgia Supreme Court reminded us when it comes to abortion, when they reinstated that abortion ban, if you're a woman in this state, you have no choice after 6 weeks. And yes, we out right now, but I remember not too long ago, at the height of the pandemic, in the midst of shelter-in-place orders, there were those service workers that suddenly became essential workers when we needed them to work. They weren't essential. They aren't essential when you look at the wages. That's that economic justice, Mrs. Steele. If they were essential, we'd at least pass a living wage, but they became essential. Why? So they would have no choice but to work. Despite low wages, despite lack of access to quality health care to protect them if they got sick. And right now, part of our focus as Hip Hop Caucus is related to returning citizens, those who are experiencing incarceration, who have experienced incarceration. And right now, there are people. Just a second. And right now, there are eligible voters whose vote is being suppressed because they have been charged with the crime but not convicted, and they are caught up in the cash bond system and are unable to vote. They have no choice but to sit there in a jail cell without access to a ballot. Now, we have been fortunate as Hip Hop Caucus to be able to work with some sheriffs, some law enforcement officers, some detention centers to try to at least get them an absentee ballot. But in this state, not every sheriff is that amenable. And so those people who are eligible to vote, no convictions, have no choice but to sit there and not exercise their right to vote. And so when we face policies like that that force us to suffer, that force us to struggle, that suppress us, then we have no choice but to vote. And so today, and throughout this midterm as Hip Hop Caucus, we've been emphasizing this point that policy is personal. And there's nothing more personal than not being able to choose what you do with your body. There's nothing more personal than having to go to work despite the health consequences. There's nothing more personal than not being able to exercise your right to vote because you're caught up in a system that is suppressing you. And so we're voting because policies can change. And we have the power to shape and to mold it and create it. Yes. We demonstrate our power when we speak up and know that we can change our systems and structures for the better. And this runoff election in Georgia is going to be a critical part of changing those systems and structures. So of all the people who are gathered here today, all the people that are watching, someone needs to vote. Yes. So thank you all for your time. Thank you all for being here. We are so glad to join you in the fight. And let's go vote.
Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Hip Hop Caucus, for all that you do. Yes. It's my pleasure to bring up now one of our other national partners. And I tell you, when we get involved in a movement, one of the things Dr. Steele always said to me as we would talk is that, you can't be worried about who's on your left or your right. If they're your friend, they're your friend. You got to know that they're there. When you're in the battle, you don't need to worry because you know they got your flank. And they're going to swing with you, not against you, and they're not going to two-time you, come against you. But it's my pleasure to bring up somebody who is just not just full of the brains and the brilliance on how to protest, on how to fight for rights, not just full of the brilliance on oratorical ability and the ability to just be able to connect with everybody, young, old, in between, white, black, it doesn't matter. Somebody who's not afraid to stand her ground. Someone who's not afraid to reclaim her time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to bring up one of the founders of the biggest, blackest buses in America, Latasha Brown with Black Voters Matter.
That's right. Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. Ain't gonna let nobody, don't let them, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom's land. Amen. Amen. Listen, sometimes we think it's about the strategy. It has never been the strategy that has moved the movement forward. It has always been the spirit of the people to leave. And
And so part of the reason why we're out here today is not just about participating in an election, that it has to go beyond that. This is about building power for our people, being unapologetic and standing in the gift of blackness that God has given us and standing in the history of struggle. Like as we're sitting here in this SCLC building, we know that the work that is done here, we're a continuation of that work. And until our people are free, until our communities have adequate resources, until we have access to health care, until our children have quality education, not only will we be here, but we're going to be in these streets, right? And so I say that because I think it's really important for us to recognize that in this moment, that is important, y'all, that it's not around what candidate or what political party. We got to believe in us. That this election is part of what we are. We have to believe in us. We have to believe that this is not just about a transaction of a vote, but we got to believe that we've got the agency, that when we work together collectively, some got to change. That when we show up, that we actually use everything that is available to us, that we can shift some things. Because let me tell you what I believe. I believe that we can have a Georgia that doesn't have 1.5 million people that are uninsured. I believe. Do you believe? But if we believe, we got to do the work. Your belief has to match your work. I also believe that I am in a state that what we've been seeing is we've been seeing hospitals close. In the last 4 years, we've seen 7 hospitals close. We know that not only has a health issue for our community, but it's an economic issue for our community as well. I believe that we can have quality health care in this state. Do you believe? Absolutely. I believe that what we're looking at right now is the opportunity, y'all, to radically reimagine the state of Georgia and push things forward. I've got news for you. The good news is part of the reason why we're seeing the voter suppression, it ain't because we're losing, y'all. It's because we are winning. We are advancing. There's never been black progress in this country, and there was no backlash, right? But we're ready for the task. And so today, as we're doing all of this week, I want those of you all that are listening, if you come on volunteers, we need all hands on deck. You can text Georgia to 25225. Text Georgia to 25225, and we'll give you ideas of things that you can do to work with us, whether it's texting, whether it's volunteering, whether it's coming out and going out in these streets with us. So text 25225. The second thing that I just want to remind people that in this moment, we need to take 5. Take 5 to the polls. It's not just about you voting. Our power has always been connected to the collective power to our community. So everybody in your household got to get up. Your friends got to get up. The people that you know got to get up. Y'all, it's power building time. And so if we're going to build power, we got to do what it takes to build power. When I say black love, you say power. Black love. Power. Black love. Power. Black love. Power. Black voters matter, y'all. 365.
365, black voters matter. You know, as Latasha was speaking and she was bringing some things back to me, and I was thinking that the first time I went to an Ethiopian restaurant, and when I went to that Ethiopian restaurant, I was looking for my fork, looking for a knife. And they're like, no, there's not going to be a fork or a knife. You're going to use your hands. I was like, this is different. And then I was looking for my plate. I said, well, where's my food? They said, no, it's a communal experience. And you all share in this experience. Well, I think that's what Latasha was saying about this voting thing. It's a communal experience. And we all have to be certain that we take our family, our friends, and our loved ones to share in it, because that's where the policies are made that will influence our communities. And that's what this is about. Ladies and gentlemen, when we get involved politically in our votes, we're not simply, and Reverend Jackson taught me this, we're not voting because somebody died for that right. We're voting so that future generations might live and live abundantly. It's my pleasure to bring up the state president of the Georgia NAACP Youth and College Division, Jaden Williams.
Good morning, Georgia. Good morning, Georgia. Come on, I need a little bit better. We standing on hollow grounds, y'all. Good morning, Georgia. There we go. Listen, I have to say good morning in absence of our president, President Gerald Griggs of the Georgia NAACP. I humbly stand as the Youth and College President. But I would be remiss if I don't start off with a quote from one of our founders, W.E.B. Du Bois. He said, "The South believed an educated Negro, dangerous Negro. And the South was not wholly wrong. For education among all kinds of men has always been and will be an element of danger and revolution, of dissatisfaction, discontent. Nevertheless, men will strive. The black vote has always been a dynamic vote. And nobody can say anything about the dynamic vote here in the state of Georgia but Georgians themselves. I am a true Georgian, born and raised. I can tell you how to go all the way down from old Atlanta University, Chestnut Street, all the way down to Klondike, Georgia. When we have the power to implement change far beyond what we see with our physical eye. We have to understand, just like he said, it's more than just the youth vote, but it's a collective vote. When we build generational success between the upper generations and our now generations, we have to understand that change will happen with the words of our mouth. 64%, y'all. Just think about it. 64% of the current runoff election has been the young black vote from the ages of 18 to 30. That hasn't happened in Georgia's history for years, ever. But now that we're voting and now that we're getting out, we have to think about what's after the election. We're now about to hold people accountable as we put people in positions. So just like Dr. said, accountability, we're pushing accountability. I'm asking you all, I'm challenging you all to get 5 people. Each person, I need you to tell them, we're going to council meetings, we're going to commissioner meetings, we're going to legislative sessions. If we don't get it, we're going to shut it down. We're going to the Board of Education meetings. You want me to say it one more time? I said, if we don't get it, we're going to shut it down. We're going to the legislative sessions, House or Senate. Matter of fact, we did this, we going to the White House. We'll shut the people's house down, because if we don't get it, that's what I like to hear. But a wise man once said, and I have to quote this as I finish, life will not give you what you deserve, but life will give you what you fight for. So my question to you as I close is, what are you fighting for? Because if it's not fighting in the streets for your people, sit on down. We got work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaden. Latasha now has claimed him as president.
That's right. And we're going to make it happen.
And we're going to make it happen. And Jaden was absolutely right when he said a wise man. And there was a statement that goes with that, says that a wise man knows his limits. And then I think Brother Roland and I certainly would take it to another level and say a wise man knows his limits, but a great man has no limits. And I don't believe Jaden has any limits. And we want to be certain that we push our young people to be great, not just wise, but great. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to bring up the first vice president of the state conference of the NAACP, as well as the field organizer for the Georgia Project, Miss T.Q. Barrett. T.Q.
Good morning, leaders. Good morning, voters. Can somebody start off by saying voting is power?
Voting is power.
Say it one more time for the people over there on Edgewood. Voting is power.
Voting is power.
Yes, it's important now more than ever. Today is the first day of early voting, and we have to be reminded that voting is power. When I talk about building power, because that's what we're doing each time we cast a vote, just by our strength in numbers, we're building power, political power. Political power and the ability to make decisions for ourselves, for our futures, for our communities, for our children. It's also important to make sure that we do hold elected officials accountable, that we make sure that we show up, like Mr. President said, at the legislative session. And it's important to remember that it's not just in casting a vote. That's just one tactic of many that we can use as a people, as a community, as young black women, and older black men and women to make decisions for ourselves. So when we talk about building political power, we're talking about placing elected officials in positions of power that are going to represent us, that are going to reflect the communities and the futures that we want to see, and hold them accountable. And when we do not show up, what we actually are doing introversely is making sure that we are getting out to the polls. When we don't show up, we're allowing these same individuals, the same elected officials, to remain in their positions of power. Well, they will continue to pass policies and legislation that will disenfranchise us, continue to harm and threaten our communities, and gatekeep our futures. And are we gatekeeping our futures now? We need to take a stand, and it starts today, and even after the vote. We're going to continue to build together. I'm thankful for the coalition partners. I'm thankful for the SCLC for allowing me to speak today and stand in the gap. But I'm not just standing in the gap for NAACP. I'm standing in the gap for the 49% of Georgians across this state who are making below the minimum wage, which is $5.15, and the federal wage, which is $7.25. I'm standing in the gap for my young sisters who will now, in this election, be first-time voters in the state of Georgia. I'm standing in the gap for those in between the ages of 18 and 30, those millennials and those Gen Zs who are out there watching, and I ought and caution you all to be encouraged, to remain true to your power, to know where your power lies. Because when we show up, they remember and they're watching us. Somebody say, all eyes are on Georgia.
All eyes on Georgia.
And with all eyes on Georgia, what will you do to change the trajectory of this great state? Thank you.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Fantastic.
The youngest first vice president of the NAACP. The youngest.
I want to be certain that y'all got that. TQ Barrett
Yes.
is the youngest, 29 years old, the youngest first vice president of the Georgia State Conference of the NAACP, TQ Barrett. Remember that name, y'all. Brewing young leaders, and I know Governor Kemp probably sent that train through here. Brewing young leaders is one of the things that we do, whether it's SCLC, Transformative Justice Coalition, Black Voters Matter, Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. Building young leaders is what we do. And it's my pleasure to bring up Ebony Brown, who is one of the young leaders. She's the Black Youth Vote representative that is a derivative out of the policies and practices of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. Ebony.
Thank you so much. I usually don't stand in front of a crowd. I'm usually on the field, but today I am here. So it is early voting. So when I say stand up, you say go vote. Stand up.
Go vote.
Stand up.
Go vote.
Stand up.
Go vote.
Georgia, our democracy is on the line. It's time to vote like our lives depend on it, because it absolutely does. This is not a drill. This is not a game. We have policies that forces a rape victim to have a baby. We literally have policies that forces a rape victim to have a baby. And keyword, policy. This is political warfare. And it takes policy to create the change that we've been asking for. And we all need to come to our understanding that our vote is our power. We are against a system that knows this wholeheartedly. And in order to change the narrative and reconstruct a system that works for all, we must continue to hold ourselves and literally everyone else that we know accountable and create a voter plan and ensure that we're doing our civic duty and just by casting the ballot every election cycle. Especially during midterm elections. This is a crucial moment where we choose our legislators and representatives that support our interests and advocate for issues that are important to us. and have a say in the decision-making process here in the state of Georgia. Decisions that affect generation to generation. And we hold the power to change the outcome of any election. All it takes is one vote. And your vote can be that deciding factor between life or death, disruption or corruption. Say it again. All it takes is one vote. And that one vote can decide if we're disrupting or corrupting our system. Now, I'm not standing here telling you who to vote for, because your vote, your choice, your right, your voice. But if you're not voting, then don't complain about the outcome of elections, because at that point, then you're a part of the problem. And ladies, hear me and hear me well. We are directly affected and have been directly affected by the policies here in the state of Georgia, which, by the way, has the highest mortality maternal rate. So when you go to the ballot, make sure that you're bringing 3 friends and they're bringing 3 of their friends, and so on and so forth. And bottom line, we have a job to do. And we need to make sure that we continue to do it until the job is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to now bring up our final speaker of this press conference. And she really does not need an introduction because of all the accomplishments that she has already done. But I tell you, when you're looking for somebody to be in your corner to fight, when you need somebody to just stiffen your spine and be able to push you forward, even when you think you might want to step back, this is the person you want to call. The Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights Under Law had her for some 25 years and made her their president emeritus because of the accomplishments that she was able to achieve there. When you get in trouble anywhere in the United States and you're voting and you're fighting with one of the polling people, they tell you to call 866-OUR-VOTE. She created it. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to bring up one of the baddest, brightest, best sisters that you could possibly imagine. A fighter that'll be in your corner. We had dogs called on us in southwest Georgia. Had police called on us in southeast Georgia. I don't know if there's a part of Georgia we can go to together that we don't get somebody called on us and trying to stop her from talking. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and president of the Transformative Justice Coalition, Barbara Arnwine.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Daryl. Everybody knows Daryl is the visionary for the Transformative Justice Coalition. He is our creative genius. This button I'm wearing, this poster you're seeing, all our banners, all our other work, he created it. And it is my honor to work with him every day. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, thank you. You know, Dr. Steele, every time I come to this building, a joy ignites in my heart. When I'm sitting in that conference room and I'm looking at the pictures of Dr. King, Fred Shuttleworth, when I look at those giants who have fought for us for these many years and given it their all, it is such an honor to know that one of those giants is our partner, and that is Dr. Charles Steele. It is so beautiful. And you know I love Kathleen Steele. She has been so beautiful and so kind and so brilliant and so strategic. It is an honor to be with you, my dear, always, always. To all our partners, thank you for today's press conference. To every voter, we just noticed a guy came by, I don't know if you guys saw him, who had his I voted sticker on his forehead. All right now? So that's what we're talking about, that we're here because the state of Georgia has the nerve, the unmitigated gall, the evil, vile, and nefarious intent of blocking voters. they went to court and tried to deny counties the option of having Saturday voting. And guess what? Coalition for the People's Agenda, the ACLU, the NAACP united and took them to court. And they lost. Those people trying to stop voters, the state of Georgia lost in its fight to keep Saturday voting. And what happened, everybody? 69,000 Georgians in only 25 counties showed up and voted that day. Yesterday, at the end of yesterday, over 165,000 Georgians had voted, both Saturday and Sunday. So, right. There you go. And you know what we saw when Queen and I and the buses were rolling up at these polling places? We saw nobody standing solo. We saw those groups of 5, those groups of 10. We saw people saying, "I'm voting." And Queen said to one person, she said, "How long you been standing in line?" Wait.
It doesn't matter because we're not moving. We're voting today.
Right. So that's the spirit. The Transformative Justice Coalition. We work all over the country. We've been blessed to work here in Georgia, and it's been our honor to have done, all the work with the Ahmaud Arbery family, who we will be working with on Sunday in Brunswick. We're going to be going all over the state, encouraging, loving on voters, and helping and supporting them to do what has to be done here to make sure that voter justice is a reality. I would tell you that Reverend Jesse Jackson wanted to be here with us. And he did everything he could, and hopefully he'll be with us next week. But I do want everyone to know that he sends his love and his spirit here. We're going to leave here today. We're going to votercade over to the Robert Woodruff Library, and Daryl will tell you more. And we're going to canvass all around the Atlanta University complex. We're going to go to Clark, Atlanta, Morris Brown, Morehouse. We're going to do everything to pass out literature and make sure people vote today, vote tomorrow, vote Wednesday, vote Thursday, vote Friday, early vote. We're going to do that. And I just want people to know that TJC, then we will go to, you look for us tomorrow in Gwinnett County. We'll be down there in Norcross. Watch out, Cobb County. Coming over to Marietta again. We're going to then go down to Daughtry County. We're going to be in Albany for 2 days, walking the streets, enlisting voters. And then we're going over to Macon, Savannah, Brunswick, Camden. We're doing it because everywhere the voters need us. While we've been here, we got an urgent call, and 21 seniors said, "We want to go to voting place, but we have no ride to get there." And that's what Helen was saying. She said, "Barbara," I said, "you got it, the bus." And so we have our 2 buses, and one of our buses is on its way to help those seniors to go vote. We're going to be giving rides to the polls and everything else we can do to make sure that people can vote. I can't thank you enough, Dr. Steele, again, for having us this morning, for allowing us to bring this word. People are watching nationally. People are watching all over Georgia. We are grateful for this opportunity. What do they say? You can't stop because we won't stop.
That's right.
And you know one thing I want to say in ending, yesterday, Reverend Barber, Bishop Barber said something that was so powerful. He says, when you vote,
we win, but he also said, don't get it confused. Your vote is your demand. It's your demand. It's not just something about you like a personality. It's because you're saying, I demand the policy they stand for. And we're going to keep pushing. So thank you so much. I can't wait to get over to to Clark, Atlanta. I can't wait to get over to the library. I can't wait for us to get all this great work on throughout Georgia. Let's go, Georgia. Let's vote.
So for people that are interested in joining in the votercade today, from 12 to 2 over at the Robert Woodruff Library at Atlanta University, join us there at the Robert Woodruff Library, where we'll be meeting to votercade.
No, we're going to votercade
from here. So meet us here at 12 o'clock. And then we will go over to the Robert Woodruff Library to votercade over at Atlanta University for that votercade.
But no. I'm sorry. You know, Daryl just got in, so let me explain again. We're votercading from here to the Robert Woodruff Library. Then when we get there, we're getting out, we're parking, and we're going to canvass all over the campuses. And we're going to have a table out in front of the library where we're going to be handing out literature in addition to our canvassing. So we're hoping that if you have a car and you want to follow us, follow the big old bus, because we're on our way after this to the Robert Woodruff Library.
Now y'all been told. You know, I want to wrap up this press conference with this statement. And I know that Reverend Jackson could not be with us here today, but I can hear him saying, Barbara, when it comes to this vote in Georgia, to the Senate Bill 202, to all the shenanigans that have been put in place to try to make it more difficult, make it more confusing for black, brown, and young voters to be able to exercise their right to vote. I could hear him saying, we're not asking for anything special. What we're asking for is that the field be level, that the rules be transparent, and that the officiating be fair. If you do those things, we can live with the result. But it's when you try to play with the rules, try to cloud up the transparency, that difficulty and distrust abide. So we encourage everybody today to get out and to vote, to get the 5 people that you've heard talk about. Get 5 people to go with you. Take them to the polls. Be certain they exercise that right to vote. We look forward to seeing everybody here at noon as we go over to Clark, Atlanta, and over to the Robert Woodruff Library on this votercade. We look forward to seeing y'all on the streets. We look forward to seeing everybody getting off the sidewalks, into the streets, and to a polling place. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.